First Contact Fallout. Ambassador Zinra of the Galactic Concordat had participated in dozens of first contact ceremonies across hundreds of cycles. They all followed the same predictable pattern. The emerging species would showcase their proudest achievements, usually crewed faster-than-light drives or basic energy weapons, while the Concordat representatives would politely nod and welcome them to galactic civilization with carefully measured condescension. This one should have been no different. The humans had barely established their first Mars colony, and their ships still relied on primitive chemical propulsion for most local travel. The Concordat's preliminary surveys suggested they were at least 3 centuries away from developing any technology of real significance. Yet as Zinra's diplomatic vessel approached Earth's orbital station, something felt different. The station itself was unremarkable, a basic rotating wheel designed for artificial gravity, solar panels extending like delicate wings. But the sensor readings made no sense. Energy signatures appeared and disappeared at random, mass calculations failed to match visual observations, and the quantum field measurements were unlike anything in the Concordat's vast databases. Ambassador, the humans are ready to receive us, reported First Officer Techley, their crystalline form shimmering with uncertainty. But, speak freely, First Officer. They're docking protocols. They're not using tractor beams or magnetic guidance. The approach vector they've provided involves some form of localized space-time manipulation. Zinra's outer membrane rippled with surprise. Impossible. Their technological development is far too primitive for such capabilities. Yet as their ship followed the transmitted coordinates, the impossible became reality. Space itself seemed to bend around them, guiding their vessel into a perfect docking alignment with no mechanical assistance. The energy expenditure was minimal, the precision absolute. The human delegation awaiting them in the airlock looked disappointingly ordinary: bipedal mammals in simple pressure suits, led by a tall female with silver-streaked hair and dark skin. She introduced herself as Dr. Sarah Chen, Earth's Chief of Extraterrestrial Relations. "Welcome to humanity's humble first steps into space," she said with a smile that seemed to hold secrets. "We're honored to finally join the galactic community." Zinra followed the standard diplomatic protocol, extending their sensory tendrils in the traditional greeting. "The Concordat welcomes Earth and its people. We look forward to guiding your species as you develop." They never finished the sentence. The entire delegation suddenly found themselves in a completely different room, with no sensation of movement or transition. One moment they were in the airlock. The next, they stood in a vast observation chamber with Earth hanging like a jewel in the window behind them. "My apologies for the abrupt transition," Dr. Chen said, still wearing that mysterious smile. "We thought it would be more comfortable to conduct our meeting here, and our quantum tunneling system is so routine now that we sometimes forget it can be startling to newcomers." Zinra's diplomatic training warred with their shock. Quantum tunneling of conscious organisms, without any visible technology or energy discharge. Even the most advanced Concordat worlds considered such technology theoretical at best, requiring power sources the size of small moons. "Perhaps," they managed to say, "you could explain how your species has achieved such capabilities while still relying on chemical rockets for basic transport." Dr. Chen gestured to a series of comfortable seats that emerged seamlessly from the floor. "That's an interesting story, actually. You see, humanity took a somewhat different approach to technological development than what we've gathered is standard for most species. Instead of pursuing a linear path of advancement, we allowed our research to branch in seemingly random directions, cross-pollinating disciplines that others might consider unrelated." As she spoke, holographic displays materialized around them, showing the history of human scientific advancement. But these were unlike any holograms Zinra had encountered. They existed simultaneously in multiple quantum states, allowing viewers to perceive different aspects of the same image depending on their viewing angle and mental focus. For instance, Dr. Chen continued, "Our quantum tunneling technology emerged from a collaboration between quantum physicists studying particle entanglement, neuroscientists mapping consciousness, and oddly enough, marine biologists studying how certain deep-sea creatures navigate in absolute darkness. None of these fields would traditionally be connected to transportation technology. First Officer Techley's crystalline form vibrated with growing alarm. But the energy requirements. Ah, yes. Dr. Chen nodded. That was another happy accident. Turns out when you combine zero-point energy extraction with principles borrowed from how plants photosynthesize, while applying quantum superposition at the macro scale, well, the power needs become quite manageable. We can run our entire planetary tunneling network on roughly the same energy as a small fusion plant. Zinra felt their diplomatic composure cracking. This meeting was rapidly spiraling beyond anything their centuries of experience had prepared them for. The humans weren't just more advanced than expected. They had developed in ways that challenged the Concordat's fundamental understanding of scientific progress. Dr. Chen, they said carefully, I must ask, why maintain the appearance of a less developed civilization? Why continue using chemical rockets and basic space stations when you clearly possess technology far beyond that level? The human's smile finally faded, replaced by a more serious expression. Redundancy. Ambassador. Each level of technology has its uses, its advantages. Chemical rockets may be primitive, but they're reliable and can't be disrupted by quantum field interference. Sometimes the old ways are still the best ways for certain applications. Besides, and here that enigmatic smile returned, we've learned it's often useful to be underestimated. As if to emphasize her point, the entire room briefly phased out of normal space-time, providing a momentary glimpse of something vast and incomprehensible before snapping back to normal. Zinra noticed their delegation's emergency quantum communicator had activated at some point, likely automatically alerting the Concordat to the situation. I should mention, Dr. Chen added casually, we detected your automated distress signal. Don't worry, we allowed it to transmit. In fact, we should be receiving. A new holographic window appeared, showing a massive Concordat defense fleet emerging from hyperspace at the edge of the solar system. Dozens of the most powerful warships in known space, responding to a potential first contact crisis. Before Zinra could even begin to process the implications, Dr. Chen made a small gesture. The entire defense fleet froze in place, caught in some kind of temporal stasis field that hadn't existed in the previous moment. Now then, she said, perhaps we should discuss humanity's entry into galactic society as equals rather than as primitives to be guided. I find diplomatic negotiations go much more smoothly when everyone's cards are on the table, so to speak. Zinra, for the first time in their long diplomatic career, found themselves completely lost for words. This was no longer a first contact ceremony. This was the beginning of something entirely new, a fundamental shift in the balance of power that had governed known space for millennia. And somewhere in the back of their mind, they couldn't help but wonder, if this was what humanity was willing to show them, what capabilities were they still keeping hidden? The hidden edge. The Concordat's Emergency Scientific Council had never convened so quickly. Within hours of Ambassador Zinra's encounter, the most brilliant minds from 30 different species gathered in the vast crystalline chamber of the Helios station, their forms ranging from pure energy constructs to silicon-based hyperintelligences. Chief Researcher Valteth, a swirling mass of plasma contained within an advanced electromagnetic field, displayed the sensor readings from Earth. These cannot be accurate. They pulsed with agitation. The humans appear to be casually violating 12 different laws of physics we considered immutable. And yet, countered Director X-227, her mechanical form gleaming under the station's lights, we all saw what happened to our defense fleet. 300 ships, including our most advanced dreadnoughts, frozen in time like insects in amber. The assembled scientists watched the replay again. The human gesture had been so simple, almost dismissive. No visible energy discharge, no massive power surge, just a casual wave of the hand, and one of the most powerful military forces ever assembled became a static display. What we need to understand, Valteth continued, is how they achieved this level of advancement while remaining virtually undetected. Our monitoring stations have watched Earth for centuries. They went from splitting atoms to quantum manipulation in less than 100 years. A holographic representation of Earth's scientific development appeared in the center of the chamber. What it showed defied all known models of technological progression, where other species followed clear, linear paths, mastering energy production, then spaceflight, then FTL travel in a logical sequence. Humanity's development looked more like a chaotic web. This is what makes them different, explained Dr. Ixlam, an ancient being composed of pure thought. Look at these connection points. While we pursued each technology to its logical conclusion before moving on, humans developed everything simultaneously, creating unexpected synergies. The display zoomed in on a particular nexus of advancement. While researching basic spaceflight, humans had simultaneously been exploring quantum mechanics, biotechnology, artificial intelligence, and dozens of other fields. More importantly, they allowed these disciplines to inform and influence each other. Here, Ixlam highlighted a specific breakthrough. They applied principles from studying bee swarm intelligence to solve quantum entanglement issues. Here, they used insights from marine biology to revolutionize their understanding of spacetime. They don't see boundaries between scientific disciplines the way we do. Valteth's plasma form flickered with concern. But this approach should have produced countless disasters. The risks of combining untested technologies. Oh, there were disasters, interrupted X-227. Our monitoring stations recorded hundreds of them. But the humans simply incorporated each failure into their learning process. They don't fear failure the way we do. They expect it, embrace it, learn from it. New data streamed into the chamber as more reports arrived from Earth. The humans had begun freely sharing information about their technological capabilities, though many suspected they were still holding back their most advanced developments. Look at this. Valteth highlighted a series of human research papers. They developed their quantum tunneling technology by intentionally causing quantum experiments to fail in specific ways. Who does that? Who looks at a failed experiment and thinks, let's see what else this failure could teach us? The implications were staggering. While the Concordat had spent millennia meticulously advancing their understanding of the universe one careful step at a time, humanity had essentially thrown themselves at the boundaries of known science from every possible angle, accepting the casualties and setbacks as necessary costs of progress. There's something else. Ixlam's thought form pulsed with concern. Something we're missing. These developments, as chaotic as they appear, show signs of underlying guidance, almost as if the ancient being paused, their consciousness flickering with uncertainty. As if what? Prompted X-227. As if humanity knew what they were looking for all along. These aren't random explorations. They're more like someone solving a puzzle they've already seen completed. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. If humans had somehow gained knowledge of advanced technology before developing it, if they had some kind of roadmap. A new alert flashed through the chamber. More data from Earth, this time showing human scientists casually discussing theories that the Concordat's best minds had struggled with for generations. They weren't just making technological leaps. They fundamentally understood principles that should have taken them thousands of years to grasp. We need to consider the possibility, Valteth said slowly, that humanity's chaotic development pattern wasn't just luck or cultural differences. They may have had access to information we don't. Information that let them know which failures would be productive, which impossible-seeming combinations might yield results. You're suggesting they found something. X-227's mechanical form whirred with agitation. Something ancient, something left behind. I'm suggesting, Valteth's plasma form pulsed brightly, that we've been trying to understand humanity's advancement using our own logical linear framework. But what if their apparent chaos masks a deeper pattern? What if they're not discovering these technologies at all, but rather remembering them? The implication sent shockwaves through the assembled scientists. The galaxy was ancient, and not all of its previous civilizations were well understood. If humanity had somehow gained access to the knowledge of a long-dead race, one that had achieved technological heights even the Concordat couldn't imagine. We need to know more, Ixlam declared. Not just about their technology, but about their history, their myths, their stories. Everything we dismissed as primitive folklore might contain hidden truths. As if in response to their concerns, another transmission arrived from Earth. Dr. Chen, the human diplomat, was requesting a full scientific exchange. She offered to demonstrate more of humanity's capabilities, including several technologies the Concordat had long considered theoretically impossible. The message ended with a cryptic note. We've carried the memories for long enough. Perhaps it's time for all children of the galaxy to remember their inheritance. The scientific council erupted into chaos, but beneath their fear and excitement lay a deeper emotion, hope. For the first time in millennia, the boundaries of known science were not just being pushed, they were being shattered. And humanity, it seemed, was only beginning to show what they could do. Diplomatic shadows. The Grand Assembly Hall of the Concordat had never felt so tense. Representatives from over 1,000 worlds filled the spiral tiers, their forms as diverse as the stars themselves. At the center of it all stood High Chancellor Vex Thor, their crystalline body refracting light in patterns that conveyed deep concern. The human question can no longer be ignored, they announced, their words automatically translated into hundreds of languages. Their technological capabilities exceed our worst fears, and their influence grows daily. The statement triggered an immediate uproar. In the mere weeks since first contact, humanity had begun sharing certain technologies with selected worlds. Nothing too advanced, just enough to demonstrate their capabilities and generate interest. Already, some younger species were beginning to look to Earth for guidance rather than the Concordat. Ambassador Zinra, still shaken from their experience on the human station, addressed the assembly. We must understand that traditional containment strategies are useless here. The humans can bypass any blockade, neutralize any military force we possess. More importantly, they know they can. Then what do you suggest? The question came from Lord Krax of the militant sectors, his warrior-bred form towering over most other representatives. We simply accept their presence, allow them to upset millennia of established order. Before anyone could respond, the air in the center of the hall shimmered. Dr. Chen appeared without warning or ceremony, causing several representatives to activate personal shields in panic. She smiled apologetically. I apologize for the dramatic entrance, but my invitation to this session appears to have been lost in transit. Her hologram, if that's what it was, looked as solid as any physical being. I thought it important that humanity have a voice in discussions about our future role in the galaxy. High Chancellor Vex Thor's crystal form pulsed with barely contained fury. This chamber is protected by the most advanced security systems in known space. Your presence here should be impossible. Should be, yes, Chen agreed pleasantly. Just as our quantum tunneling should be impossible, just as our temporal manipulation should be impossible, I think we've established that humanity has a rather different understanding of what's possible than the Concordat does. Lord Krax moved forward, his massive form radiating menace. You dare. I dare to prevent a catastrophic mistake. Chen interrupted, her voice suddenly sharp. With a gesture, she projected a series of images around the hall. They showed various Concordat species secretly preparing for war, gathering fleets, developing new weapons. Did you think we wouldn't notice, that your preparations would escape our attention? The human's voice carried an edge of disappointment. We've observed every emergency session, every clandestine meeting, every attempt to develop countermeasures against us. The hall erupted in chaos. Some representatives demanded immediate military action. Others called for negotiations, while a few simply fled the chamber in terror. Silence. Vex Thor's command cut through the pandemonium. They turned to Chen, crystal form pulsing with complex emotions. "What do you want from us?" Chen's expression softened. "The same thing we've wanted since we first looked up at the stars. To learn, to grow, to share knowledge. We're not your enemies, Chancellor. We're not even your rivals. We're simply ahead of schedule." Ahead of schedule. The phrase rippled through the assembly. Chen nodded. Humanity wasn't supposed to achieve these breakthroughs for another 1,000 years. We know this. We've seen the timelines, the projections. But something happened. Something wonderful and terrible and impossible to ignore. She gestured again, and the hall transformed. The representatives found themselves standing in what appeared to be an ancient chamber, deep beneath Earth's surface. Archaeological equipment lay scattered about, and on the walls. "We found this 30 years ago," Chen explained. "A library of sorts, left behind by those who came before. Not just technology, but understanding. Knowledge encoded in a way that resonated with human consciousness in a way it never did with other species." The walls were covered in symbols that seemed to shift and change, telling stories of unimaginable advancement and terrible warnings. Many of the representatives felt dizzy trying to comprehend them. "We didn't just find advanced technology," Chen continued. "We found purpose, direction. The ones who came before, they didn't just leave their knowledge. They left a message. Find your own path." She turned to face the assembly directly. "That's what terrifies you, isn't it? Not that we're advanced, but that we achieved it in ways you never considered possible. We broke your rules, ignored your carefully plotted development paths, and succeeded anyway. And now?" Vex Thor asked quietly. "Now we offer a choice." Chen's form seemed to grow more substantial, more present. "Continue down your path of fear and preparation for a war you cannot win, or join us in exploring what's possible when we stop limiting ourselves to what we think we know." "You speak of cooperation," Lord Krax growled, "yet you invade our most secure facility, spy on our private councils." "We do what's necessary to prevent conflict," Chen corrected. "Every preparation for war you've made, every weapon you've developed in secret, we could have stopped them all. Instead, we let you proceed, let you discover for yourselves the futility of military action against us." She paused, looking around the chamber. "We don't want to rule the galaxy. We don't even want to change it much. We just want to show you what's possible when you stop being afraid of breaking the rules." The assembly hall fell silent as her words sank in. It was Zinra who finally spoke, their diplomatic training helping them find the right words. "And if we refuse, if we choose to maintain our traditional paths of development?" Chen's smile held a touch of sadness. "Then we'll wait. We'll watch. We'll continue sharing what we think you're ready for, and hope that eventually you'll understand what we've been trying to tell you. The universe is far stranger and more wonderful than any of us imagined. The only real limits are the ones we place on ourselves." With that, she vanished, leaving the assembly in tumult. But she had left something behind, a simple data crystal containing humanity's first official proposal for galactic cooperation. And as the representatives began to examine it, many found themselves wondering if perhaps it was time for the galaxy to learn a new way of thinking. The revelation. Deep beneath the surface of Mars, in a chamber that had been sealed for millions of years, Dr. Elena Santos stood before a gathering of the galaxy's most prominent scientists. The room hummed with an energy that had nothing to do with technology. Anticipation, fear, and wonder rolled through the assembled beings like a wave. "This is where it all began," Elena said, her voice carrying easily through the perfect acoustics of the ancient chamber. "Not on Earth, as many assumed, but here on Mars. The first cache of knowledge, preserved in crystals that responded only to human neural patterns. The walls of the chamber were alive with shifting patterns, mathematical equations that seemed to solve themselves, diagrams that built and rebuilt vast machines in seconds. The alien scientists watched, transfixed, as humanity's greatest discovery revealed itself. High researcher Valteth moved closer to one of the walls, their plasma form flickering with intense curiosity. These equations, they're not just descriptions of technology. They're teaching tools, Elena finished. The ancients didn't just leave us blueprints. They left us an entire educational system, one that adapts to the learner's level of understanding. But more importantly, they left us their philosophy of science itself. She touched a panel, and the chamber filled with a new pattern, a sprawling web of interconnected concepts that seemed to exist in more dimensions than should be possible to perceive. This is why we developed so differently from the Concordat species, Elena explained. We never saw technology as a linear progression. The ancients showed us that everything is connected: biology, physics, consciousness, even what you might call magic. They're all just different perspectives on the same underlying reality. Dr. Ixlam's thought form pulsed with sudden understanding. That's why our containment efforts were doomed from the start. We tried to restrict your development in individual areas, never realizing that for humans, advancing in one field meant advancing in all of them. Elena nodded. Exactly. When we improved our understanding of quantum mechanics, we simultaneously advanced our grasp of biology, psychology, and spatial manipulation. The ancients taught us that the boundaries between scientific disciplines are artificial, useful for basic understanding, but ultimately limiting. She moved to the center of the chamber, where a crystalline structure rose from the floor like a growing tree. But there's something else, something we've only recently begun to understand ourselves. The crystal began to glow, projecting images that seemed to bypass the viewer's sensory organs and appear directly in their consciousness. They saw the ancient ones, beings of pure energy and thought, who had transcended the physical limitations that bound younger races. They didn't choose humanity randomly. Elena continued, her voice soft with reverence. They chose us because of our chaos, our unpredictability. Every other spacefaring race they encountered followed predictable patterns of development, built on logic and careful progression. But humans, we were different. The images shifted, showing humanity's chaotic history, wars and peace, destruction and creation, great leaps forward, and devastating steps back. But through it all, there was a pattern that only became visible when viewed through the lens of the ancients' understanding. We were already breaking the rules, Elena said, already questioning the boundaries between disciplines, already making intuitive leaps that defied conventional logic. The ancients didn't give us their knowledge because we were special. They gave it to us because we were already thinking the way they did. Valteth's form pulsed with confusion. But the risks, the potential for catastrophic mistakes, were necessary, Elena finished. The ancients believed that true understanding couldn't come from careful, controlled progression. It had to emerge from chaos, from failure, from the willingness to break everything we think we know and start again. She touched the crystal again, and new images filled the chamber, future possibilities, potential developments that made even the most advanced current technologies look primitive. This is what they were preparing us for, Elena said. Not just new technology, but a new way of existing. The ability to see beyond the artificial boundaries we create, between disciplines, between species, between what we think is possible and impossible. Dr. Ixlam's thought form expanded with sudden alarm. The temporal anomalies we've detected throughout human space. You're not just developing new technologies. We're remembering how to exist outside of linear time, Elena confirmed. The ancients didn't just leave us their knowledge. They left us their evolution, their transformation. And now we're offering the same to you. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. This wasn't just about advanced technology or new scientific principles. This was about the next step in conscious evolution. But why now? Valteth asked. Why reveal all this? Elena's expression became grave. Because what's coming next requires all of us. The ancients left warnings along with their knowledge, warnings about cycles of universal development, about challenges that no species can face alone. The crystal's glow intensified, and the chamber filled with visions of something vast and incomprehensible approaching from the spaces between galaxies. We've broken the rules, advanced faster than we should have, because we had to, Elena said. And now we need to help you do the same. Not for power, not for control, but for survival. For all of us. The assembled scientists stared at the visions of what was to come and finally began to understand. Humanity's chaotic development, their seemingly impossible achievements, their insistence on sharing knowledge. It wasn't about changing the galaxy's power structure. It was about preparing the galaxy for something far more important than politics or power. Something that would require every species to learn what humanity had learned. That the only way forward was to break free from the limitations of conventional thought. As the visions faded, Elena touched the crystal one final time. So, she said softly, shall we begin? New dawn. The Sol system had changed beyond recognition in the 6 months since humanity's revelations, where once there had been empty space between planets, now massive structures hung in carefully calculated orbits, research stations, learning centers, and diplomatic outposts representing every major species in known space. Admiral Sarah Chen, recently promoted from her diplomatic role, stood at the observation deck of Nexus 1, Earth's primary interface with galactic civilization. Below her, the blue marble of Earth spun serenely, while Mars glowed with the lights of 1,000 new installations. The latest results from the Transformation Initiative are in, reported Captain Rodriguez, his holographic form shimmering beside her. Another 300 species have successfully integrated the ancient learning protocols. Their development is remarkable. Chen nodded, watching as a Concordat vessel phased through spacetime nearby, its crew already mastering principles that would have been incomprehensible to them months ago. And the resistance diminishing. The militant sectors have seen the evidence with their own eyes. Even Lord Krax has requested access to the learning chambers. A smile touched Chen's lips. The warrior lord had been among their staunchest opponents, but even he couldn't deny the results. Species that embraced the ancient knowledge weren't just advancing technologically. They were evolving, growing in ways that transcended physical limitations. And our preparations for what's coming. Rodriguez's hologram flickered with concern. The long-range sensors are confirming everything the ancients warned us about. The void between galaxies is moving. Whatever's out there, it's vast beyond comprehension. Show me. The observation deck transformed into a 3-dimensional map of the local galaxy cluster. At the edges of known space, something massive was approaching. Not a fleet, not even a conventional threat, but a fundamental alteration in the fabric of reality itself. The ancients called it the Great Filter, Chen said softly, the ultimate test of consciousness itself. Every civilization in every galaxy eventually faces it. Most fail, most forget. The few that succeed transcend. And that's why they chose us, because we might succeed where others failed. Chen shook her head. They chose us because we were already different, because we look at the impossible and see opportunity, because we take risks that more logical species would never consider. She gestured, and the display shifted to show the hundreds of learning centers now operating throughout known space. In each one, different species were breaking free from their traditional limitations, learning to see reality as the ancients had, as a canvas to be reshaped rather than a set of immutable laws. We're not teaching them our way of thinking, Chen explained. We're helping them remember their own potential. Every species has it, that spark of chaos, that willingness to question everything they think they know. We just wake it up. A new alert flashed across the display. Another group of species had achieved breakthrough understanding, their collective consciousness expanding beyond traditional bounds. The process was accelerating. The latest estimates suggest we'll achieve galaxy-wide transformation within the year, Rodriguez reported. But will it be enough? The filter is closer than we thought, Chen finished. But we're also advancing faster than expected. The ancients believed it would take centuries for the galaxy to prepare. We're doing it in months. She turned as a new presence entered the observation deck. High Chancellor Vexthor, their crystalline form now incorporating patterns that would have been impossible months ago. The Council has reached a decision. They announced without preamble. We're formally dissolving the old power structures. The Concordat, the militant sectors, all of it. We need something new, something that reflects what we're becoming. Chen raised an eyebrow. That's faster than expected. Are you sure the galaxy is ready? Ready? Vexthor's form shimmered with what might have been laughter. We're beyond ready and not ready at all. But that's the point, isn't it? What you humans have been trying to teach us all along. That waiting for readiness is another form of limitation. The observation deck filled with new data as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Species that had been enemies for millennia were working together, sharing insights, breaking through barriers that had seemed permanent. The change wasn't just technological, it was psychological, spiritual, fundamental. We're calling it the convergence, Vexthor continued. Not an empire, not an alliance, but a new way of existing. Together, but individual. United, but unique. Chen smiled. The ancients would approve. They never wanted us to copy them. They wanted us to find our own path. A sudden ripple passed through space-time, causing every sensor in the system to light up. The assembled leaders watched as reality itself seemed to flex. It's beginning, Chen said quietly. The filter is making its presence known. But where there might have been fear months ago, now there was only determination. Throughout the galaxy, transformed civilizations prepared to face the ultimate challenge, not as separate species, not even as allies, but as something new, something that had never existed before. You know, Vexthor mused, we spent millennia fearing change, building systems to prevent it, creating rules to control it. And all along, change was the only constant in the universe. Chen nodded, watching as another wave of transformations swept through nearby systems. The ancients understood that. They knew that survival doesn't go to the strongest or the smartest, but to those who can adapt, those who can change, like humanity did, like we all can. That's what makes this different from every other cycle. We're not just facing the filter, we're changing what we are, becoming something new, something that might not just survive the filter, but transcend it entirely. The observation deck lit up with new alerts as more breakthroughs were reported. Species after species achieving insights that should have taken centuries, breaking free from physical and mental limitations, preparing for what was to come. Outside, the vast structures orbiting Earth pulsed with energy as they channeled the combined understanding of thousands of civilizations. The ancient knowledge wasn't just being learned, it was being transformed, expanded, evolved into something greater than its original form. It's beautiful, isn't it? Chen said softly, watching as another group of species achieved breakthrough. Not just the advancement, but the unity. The understanding that we're all part of something greater. Vexthor's crystalline form resonated with agreement. And to think we once feared you, feared change itself. Fear is natural, Chen replied. Overcoming it, that's what makes us ready for what comes next. As if in response to her words, the sensors detected another ripple from deep space. The filter was coming, its incomprehensible presence growing stronger. But this time, the galaxy wouldn't face it as separate species bound by rigid rules and ancient limitations. This time, they would face it together, transformed by ancient knowledge, yet uniquely themselves, ready to prove that the impossible was just another boundary waiting to be broken. The new dawn had arrived, and with it, the greatest adventure in galactic history was about to begin.